I think I ended up with like $60 million after the exit.
Auren Hoffman's big exit was, well, really big. That wasn't the goal, though. In fact,
I don't set goals. I've never have.
And that first $60 million, it was just the beginning. You see, these days, Auren exits companies all the time, but they're not his own companies. He does so as an angel investor. But those exits are, frankly, a bit boring.
I don't get that much satisfaction investing, period.
Angel investing, it sounds awesome. Big exits, big checks, but it's not for everyone. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan, but it works for Auren. In this episode, we're going to talk about why he loves to angel invest and if it could work to you. And also, he's going to share his easy step-by-step guide on how not to be happy. I'm Sam Parr, and this is MoneyWise. And this is a show where we don't talk about how to get rich. We talk about what happens next once you already have money. A lot of the conversations that I have for this podcast, they're inspired by a community that I own. It's called Hampton. Join Hampton.com. We have 1,000 plus members, and the average company does something like $25 million a year in revenue, which means the average member is incredibly wealthy. And so I'm able to see all types of incredible conversations. And a conversation that I see happening a lot lately is from people who have recently sold their company and are asking if they should angel invest. And so I made this episode specifically for them, but I think a lot of you listening are going to get a ton of value. That $60 million that Auren referenced at the top wasn't the total tag of his big exit. That is the amount that he made personally. Since then, Auren has started his own venture capital firm after a ton of angel investments, and he's had a bunch of exits, many that have sold for $25 to $100 million, a couple for over $1 billion, to companies like Google, Apple, and Twitter. Now, I don't want to blow Auren's cover because he didn't exactly say this, and I'm just speculating. This is all just guessing off the numbers. But if I had to guess, I would say that even though he made $60 million from the first exit, I bet he's worth at least $100 million now. Either way, he's done amazing for himself. And even more important, he's an amazing guy. I love talking to him. And for him, building wealth, it started at a very young age.
Started a company in high school that ended up paying my way through college.
What was that?
Basically like a temp firm for high school kids.
Like a if you need a hourly worker,
lawnmower, all that stuff. Yeah, and we would take 10% of what the kids made, and like the really good jobs, I'd just take myself, like the lawn mowing, snow shoveling jobs stuff.
Were you making a lot of money, or was college cheap, or both?
I mean, I saved like $30,000.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and in the 90s, that was enough money I went to Berkeley, and then I ran out of money my third year at Berkeley. And then I started an internet company.
And so
to pay for my last year.
Were you always an entrepreneur, or did you ever have a job?
I never had a real job except for when I got acquired by companies.
And yeah, so you were an entrepreneur out the gate. And so I'm looking at it, your first business out of college was at BridgePath?
We started a company called Kyber Systems while I was in college. And then we sold that like a year after I graduated. And then we started BridgePath. And
then did any of these actually make any money, or are they enough to pay the bills?
They would, someone made, a little bit of money, like, you end up with like $1 million or something, enough money where it's like, oh, I feel wealthy.
Oh, well, that's awesome. What year and what age were you when you made your first million?
I don't remember, but in my 20s.
Like 25?
Yeah, probably.
That's a ton. That's a huge win.
Yeah, it was great.
In 98, like 97?
Probably, so probably more like, I was probably 25 in 2000, 2001.
Oh, 2001. So 2001, you think that was when you made your first million. That's like a huge thing. In 2001, that was 20 something years ago, 24 years ago.
Yeah.
That's like
I don't remember the date, but I remember looking at my bank account and I was like, oh, wow. I forgot how much money was in there, but it might have, I don't remember how much it was, but I remember being like, my goal was to get to 2 years of cash in the bank.
Well, how much were you spending?
I got there relatively quickly by just spending low. That was my goal. And then
because your income was salary, or did you actually make anything significant from selling the businesses?
I made a little bit from selling some businesses. So I had some savings. And then, so, me making my first million until like 27 or something. But before that, I got to 2 years of money in the bank.
Dude, that feels so good too. I used to have a sheet that I used up until like the age of 28, where it was like, here's my trailing 6 months of spending. Here's how much liquid I have now. Therefore, that equals X amount of months.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I did the exact same thing.
Well, I eventually read that 25 years, your annual spending, and you will never run out of money. But then when I was starting companies, it was basically, I always thought in my head, if I can get to like 3 years, that's definitely enough time that if I live the way I'm living now, I can do that. I can start a company for 18 months. And then very conservatively, I can get a job in the next 6 to 12 months and be fine.
You remember when Enron blew up, or do you know the story?
Well, I was, I'm born in '89, so I was 11. But I remember it being one of the largest energy companies in the world, and overnight it was well regarded, and then overnight it was bankrupt.
Yeah. So my theory behind it at the time, I don't know if this is true or not, but I read The Smartest Guys in the Room, which is a great book, is that these guys were like, in some ways, living beyond their means. And they may have been unethical to begin with. It's unclear, but they were doing unethical things to keep the plates spinning. So the simple way to not do something unethical, you always want to think of yourself as a super ethical person, but I don't want to attempt myself.
Like if you get into a trap where it's like, oh my God, I got bills to pay. And
totally. It's like the simple way to not do it is just, you can walk away. So it's like, I never have to work for anyone unethical. If someone bought my company or whatever, I could just walk away. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, if you can't walk away from something, you might be forced to do something you don't want to do.
What's the timeline of your, like the overview of your businesses? So you had 2 companies in your 20s. Those were big enough that you were able to become a millionaire in your mid to late 20s. But then LiveRamp, was that the next one?
That was the next one, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it started like a consulting firm, but that was the next one. Started that when I was 32.
LiveRamp?
Yeah.
And how big did that get?
I mean, it got big enough that, the exit, I think I ended up with like $60 million after the exit or something.
How old were you?
I was 40 at the exit.
Wow. So you made $60 million. Were you making anything along the way?
Not at LiveRamp. I mean, I had some money that I was investing from and things like that.
Was it basically like overnight you went from whatever your
very
was,
barely, because at the time, like, I had already bought a house. I had young kids. I bought a house, and you bought a house in San Francisco. And so it wasn't like I was living large or anything. So it was enough where, like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I can take care of the kids for the rest of my life. And you don't have to worry about that side of things.
How much was the deal? The deal must have been hundreds of millions of dollars then, yeah?
It was 310 plus other incentives and things, yeah.
Making $60 million in one sum, did that make you happier?
Yeah. I think money makes people happier.
I agree. That's like one of the big premises on this podcast, which is that the idea that it doesn't, that's a bit of a lie.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some people, it could indulge certain things that are not great for those people. For some people, it can make things worse, but I think for the vast majority of people, it makes things better.
Did your lifestyle change?
Yeah. Yes.
In what ways?
As you said, if you do that division of X over 25 or whatever your formula is, well, now all of a sudden it's like, well, might as well have a good time and enjoy things and et cetera.
So I am a personal finance nut. That's one of the reasons why this podcast came into existence. And it sounds like you are too, or at least you were when you were tracking this stuff. Leading up to your exit, were you still like a personal finance nut where you were like tracking, you're like, if this happens, then my runway changes? I
was definitely tracking things very carefully prior to the exit. And then post-exit, I was not tracking things nearly as much.
After the exit, did you track your spending at all?
Post-exit, I did not track it anywhere near to the same extent as prior.
At all?
I mean, I track certain things, but yeah, I think like we track the very big things and the very small things, but not any of the medium stuff.
That's funny. Why the small things?
I feel like that's always like, if you're running a company, you should do that. It's like you should do the extremely big things, and then you got to inspect the small things, because that's where like the culture changes and that's where all the weird stuff. And you should never do the medium stuff when you're running a company. And I think it's the same thing with like running, your own personal finances. That is what indicates things might be going off the rails.
That's so fascinating. That is a really good insight. And so a big thing would be your mortgage. It would probably be how you like to fly.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. It might not be if you're not flying private. Yeah.
Well, even if you fly first class with a family of 5, that adds up. But
I have a family of 4. But yeah, you're right. Right. I mean, we spend a lot of money there, but that it doesn't truly add up like that. You might spend a couple $100K a year tops. So it could end up.
But where then? What are the large things? Housing.
Yeah, well, how you invest your money could be large. Like if you put,
and for you, it would be angel checks, I would imagine.
It could be that, or if you put $1 million into something, and that even could be charity. Like if you're giving money away, well, that's big. That's a big thing to think about. But if you're giving, a small dollar charity, then maybe it's not as big a thing to think about. And then where you want to live, your house, right? So just think like those types of things. And there's your house comes with all these expenses with it.
So what's a small thing? Like, for example, teaching your children, like I don't know, if they're buying clothing, like to measure, like, all right, do you want the fancy thing or do you want the not fancy thing? And like, are you going to get?
Okay, you have a Hulu subscription, a Max subscription. Did you know if you get those together, you can save $5 a month? Are we doing that? Are we not? Like, that's like an obvious thing to do. Those little things I think are very important. Or you have a late fee for the credit. Why do you have a late fee for the credit card? Let's pay to put on auto pay. Like, just thinking about the little things I think are very important. And then talking to your kids about it, I think it's the next level as well. You don't want your kids to, be like understanding it, even if they're coming from a very different lens.
What do you think is like the amount of monthly spending where you're like, this feels good and I'm happy and I don't want more?
I think I want more.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
So I think it feels very good right now, but if I could triple it, like I think I would.
Are you able to like give a ballpark on what your spend is now? Over or under 100?
A month?
Yeah.
Oh, probably over, but not that much over.
So he's already doing well prior to selling his company LiveRamp, which is rare. Most people are just kind of getting by until they have that big exit. But then 2014 comes in, he's 40 years old, and suddenly he has $60 million, which is sort of the beginning for kicking off everything else in this podcast. But like any good business story, LiveRamp almost went under a few times.
We were raising money in 2010, and we had a few term sheets. And we knew there was going to be a bad article about us in the Wall Street Journal.
Like what? Saying your product was stupid or something?
Just saying we're just bad people, all this other stuff. And so we actually wrote a fake article that was really nasty about us. And we sent it to the 3 venture capital firms that gave us the term sheet. And we said, this is what we think is going to come out about us. Do you still want to invest in us based on this super nasty article? And we wrote and it was way more. The article we wrote was way more nasty than anything that ever came out. But we just wrote. It was actually really fun and very cathartic to write this like super nasty thing. And then based on the reactions, we picked the one we thought was going to close the fastest, and that one closed like 3 days before the nasty article ended up. And I still, even with that one, if the nasty article came out beforehand, they may have not closed.
I did a very similar thing, by the way.
Oh, really?
And I actually got a little philosophical about it. It feels good to write out the worst case scenario.
Yeah. And by the way, I always think of really bad. All my life, I've always thought about bad stuff. Do you do that?
Yeah. I
always think I'm like sitting, let's say I'm waiting for a friend in a restaurant, and I'm like, what happens if like 6 armed terrorists show up at this restaurant? Like, where am I going to go? What's going to happen? Like, I'm constantly thinking about this stuff. And I feel like just always thinking about these really bad, crazy things that could happen. The plane goes down. Where am I going to sit? How am I going to survive it? How am I going to save my family? You know,
I have a rule when we go out to dinner with my family. I always have to sit with my back against the wall.
And
I want to be able to see, and I have to be able to see the door because
exactly. You got to fight the bad guys.
It's a guy thing. Yeah. But in terms of entrepreneurship, I always had a fear that I was going to be homeless.
I never had that fear.
Yeah, I always had I was like, I'm gonna be like on the streets. I'm gonna run out. I'm gonna have nothing. That was my fear.
Because you knew you could always get a random job somewhere, right? Like if people had a failure, if your last company was a failure, instead of selling to HubSpot, maybe you would have decided to go do another company, but maybe you would have, decided to go take care of your family and go work somewhere, and you would have done fine.
Well, I always think to myself, I can always just go power wash driveways and probably make like $5,000 a month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. I used to think like that type of stuff. Exactly.
Yeah, like I see things outside. I'm like, oh wow, they have private garbage trucks in this neighborhood. How much is a garbage truck? Oh, it's only $40,000. I bet you I can convince this guy to do seller financing.
I had this whole thing around Christmas lights on people's houses. People pay so much money for Christmas lights. I'm like,
Christmas lights and pumpkins.
Yeah, I'm like, I could do that so fast. Like, I'm pretty good at that type of stuff. I'm good with the ladders and like, I'm like, oh yeah, I can. Like, it's like I talk about that with my kids. I'm like, you guys should start a Christmas light company when you're in like high school and like make all this big.
I wish I could share my text chat with my wife, where I'm like, I take a photo. I'm like, look at this person's front yard with the haystacks and the pumpkins. I bet we can create a package A, B, and C. Package A is 500. Package B is 1,500. Package C is $3,000. And we're gonna make it look like. And in my head, it's all like, just in case. Yeah, we can do this.
Yeah,
I love talking to entrepreneurs who think like that. Your brain is constantly spinning with new ideas, and it's sort of like you see the world through a completely different lens. I think that is the reason why I started this podcast, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I started Hampton, which is the company that I own, which puts on this podcast. My opinion is that founders, people like you, I assume if you're listening to this, you're a founder, people like you and I, we need people around us who get it. We need people who hype us up. We need people who challenge our thinking. We need people who help us stay strategic and calm during all the ups and downs. And if you've ever started a company, which I'm sure you have if you're listening to this, and if you've ever listened to more than one episode of MoneyWise, honestly, it's mostly down. And it's funny to joke and say things like, oh, well, if it goes under, I'm just going to plow driveways. And to be fair, it's comforting to feel confident that you're going to work things out and everything's going to be just fine, even if the worst case scenario happens. But the truth is that downturns, they can be tough. I'm telling you, I have ran a company before. It is mostly down, at least in the first 5 to 10 years. And in my opinion, having a sense of community, a group of people who you can lean on, a group of people who know everything about you, who have been there, who have done that, a bunch of them who have already gotten through what you're trying to get through, that makes all the difference. I'm telling you, I've been there. It's hard. I couldn't talk to my wife because she wasn't there all day seeing what I was going through. I couldn't talk to my staff because I didn't want to look stupid or not confident. It was just really hard. And when I finally opened up to a group of people who got to know me over the course of a year, over 2 years, over 3 years, it was amazing. It was like having a board of advisors. It was people who knew what I should do. It was people who already knew all of the weaknesses, all the mistakes that I've been making, who helped me realize how foolish I'd been and helped me overcome a lot of issues that I was having. It changed my life. And so right now in our community in Hampton, there's a ton of people struggling with the whole tariff situation. There's a lot of uncertainty around it. And so we've organized groups and meetups and talks all around the situation. And one of the things that we've done is we've gotten the best D2C and e-com founders in the business to make sure that everyone in the community is able to pull through this really challenging and uncertain time. Just recently, for example, we just did a Q&A with the founder of Poppi. Poppi's a soda brand that recently just sold to Pepsi for like $2 billion. We had the founder down in Austin, and we just sat around her asking tons of questions about tariffs and what was going on in the world of D2C, and it was amazing. And so seeing people come together and really make the most out of this founder community, this entrepreneur community that we built, it's amazing, and I'm incredibly proud of it. And so if you are a founder doing at least $3 million in revenue, come and join. Come and check it out. I review every single application. It's joinhampton.com. Everything we do, by the way, defaults to in real life. So in real life core groups, in real life events, and it makes my heart feels great. So check it out, joinhampton.com. Okay, so back to the timeline. Thankfully, trash talking his own company helped Auren keep it going, and things worked out pretty amazingly for him. And immediately after the big exit, he does this.
Start another company.
And that was SafeGraph.
Yeah, which is now called Incubate. But yeah. So we have like a holding company that owns SafeGraph and a bunch of other things.
And we
also
exited.
have a venture capital firm, Flex Capital, which invests in these like seed stage companies and stuff.
Have you had any exits since LiveRamp?
Yeah. In terms of like, not that I'm the CEO of, but my main income is like exits from investments,
Angel investments.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you made more from angel investing than you actually made from starting and selling your own companies?
No. But we haven't risked a lot of my personal capital yet to do that either. So you put X amount aside to go do it, and now I do all my investing out of the fund.
Of your net worth, what percentage is in? How's it allocated?
I mean, it's mostly in safe things,
like index, VTI, bonds.
Yeah, some of it's even in cash and stuff.
And then what percentage is in angel investments? 10%, you think, or more?
That sounds about right. Maybe higher if you include our fund, because I also put money into our fund. Then it would be higher than that.
Are you still working pretty hard? Because if you look at your LinkedIn, it looks like you have so much stuff going on.
I work probably 70 hours a week of like work. Yes, I work very long hours. I really like it.
And do you have an end goal, or do you do it because you just like? I really
like creating things and working on products. Things that are product oriented are things that I really enjoy. So I try to spend. And one of the things that I've been able to do in the last year is really change my calendar to spend much more time on like product oriented things, and rather than other management stuff or other things like that I am okay at, but I wasn't excellent at. And if I could spend like the rest of my life doing like a very high percentage of my time doing like product oriented things, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think after I sold, I took some time off, and then I got into it. I got back to it because I was like, I love it, but it's I think it's a lot easier to love it when you don't need it. That's for sure. Because I remember like in the thick of things before I had an exit, I was like, I would do anything for this to be over.
I was never like that. I always had a good time. I always loved it, even like when we got punched in the face, and when we were at LiveRamp, we got punched in the face quite a lot. But I don't know, it was just always really fun. And it was like, well, if we went under, we went under, and I would just go figure out something else.
But then how could you say that making $60 million made you happier when it sounds like you were pretty happy?
I was already very happy. Yes. I was probably already a 9 out of 10 pre that. So I was always that's why I don't think people's goals should be to make themselves happy. Because
was that never your goal? Your goal was never to make a certain amount of money? Well, you said for a minute it was.
That's different from making money. I think you shouldn't have goals. It's okay to want things, but if your main goal in life is things that people could be born with, and people could be born with happiness, they could be born with health, they could be born with money, then that shouldn't be like your main goal. Because those are just things like random people could be born with. And then it's like, well, then it's a weird goal. If like, well, Bob over there was already born with those three things, So I think your goal should be other things that you can't be just born with, that you has to do. So how do you contribute to society? What are you creating? What type of fulfillment you're doing? Those to me are like the bigger, more important goals.
Yeah, and sometimes I just think I'm going to do it just because it's fun.
Yeah. Oh, I think honestly, that is why I like to do these things too. This is fun, and I like the people I work with, and it's enjoyable. And people around me like get me energy, and they make me smile. I like to learn from them.
What is like a fun goal for you to like think about?
I don't set goals for myself
on purpose.
Like that. Yeah, I've never have. I think there's like two types of super ambitious people. There's like the person's like Bill Clinton in 1974, and he wants to be president, and so he maps it all the way. He's like, okay, well, I got to become the attorney general of Arkansas, and they'll become the governor, and then this will happen. I've got to marry this type of person.
I'm that person.
And,
I'm that
okay,
person.
so I think, and that's probably the majority of it. And obviously, like, the plans change, they move around. Instead of becoming president, they might become secretary of treasury or something. And then there's another type of ambitious person who just wants to, like, I don't know, I just want to, like, build cool shit, do cool stuff. I do want to win. I am competitive, but I don't have, like, a real goal in mind. And then I just want to reassess things. I think every so often it's good to, every year or so, I want to okay, is this thing that I'm doing really something I want to keep doing? Is it something really that's, like, moving the needle?
Do you get similar amounts of satisfaction angel investing as you did starting companies? And
I don't get that much satisfaction investing, period. I started the venture capital firm, Flex Capital.
It's a $200 million firm?
Yeah. I started with Flex Capital with one of my best friends, Todd Sacerdoti. And what I get satisfaction is getting to do something with him. I love talking to him. I love working with him. I love his mind. And now we've got a third partner, Paul Johnson, who's amazing. We have a great team who are around us, who I get to talk to. So I love this. I love being on the team. And I like building something. I like the company that we're building. We're building a company who happens to be investing. That's what I like. The investing part, the other people on the team are more into it than I am. They get more satisfaction about the actual art of investing, which I find intellectually interesting, but it's not as satisfying as actually just building the company that ends up doing the investing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the way that you divided people up into people like me who are planners and then people like you who are more, I think that you enjoyed the process and I think I enjoyed the outcome. And I've thought about that a bunch, but you verbalized it in a way that I hadn't thought of before. And when you're describing how you don't really love investing, but you just like the people, I think people with your attitude tend to be more often than not tend to be at least happier and probably more successful than the people with my attitude. Would you agree with that?
I don't know, because I find that, that, like, the line, I think it's from Anna Karina, like, all happy families are alike and all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. I actually think that's wrong. I think it's almost the opposite. Like, so many unhappy things are just unhappy very clearly with the same pattern, but all happy people are happy with their own snowflake. And they find their own passions and they find their own types of things. Like, I know so many people that are happy and they're so different and they care about so many different things and they get so excited about other stuff and random things to make them happy. Whereas, like, it tends to be like very small number of things that make people unhappy. I can tell you what not to do rather than tell you what to do.
What are examples of those not to do things?
I wrote this, like, post once about how to be unhappy. And you can go find it. It's some Twitter thing somewhere. And it's just, like, literally just follow the post of, like, if you want to be unhappy, just follow this guide.
I'm actually curious. I'm trying to find the post of what things were on that list.
I mean, there's so many simple ways to be unhappy. One is catastrophize things, blame things on yourself all the time, not seeing the good in other people by default. When someone says something, just, like, not taking, like, the best interpretation of it, that's, like, a really easy way to be unhappy, right? There's certain ways to spend your time where you're just going to be less happy and, just, like, not hanging out with people, not spending time with the community. These are tried and true, like, thousands of years things. I'm not even talking about things like social media, which are new, just, like, things that we've known for thousands of years. Just, if you really want to be unhappy, just do those things. And it's a very small number of things you can do, and you will guarantee yourself a life of unhappiness.
That's a book I would read. And honestly, if Auren is looking to up his work week from 70 hours, I'm sure a ton of other people would buy that book too. In a couple of minutes, he'll also give us some tactical advice on angel investing. But first, I want to answer the question we started with in the beginning of this episode. Why does angel investing work for Auren? As much as it is a financial thing, I think it's also a little bit of a life philosophy. Auren's life, it's not about competing. It's not about proving something to someone else. It's not about building status or happiness via money or business success. He just loves working hard with people he likes. He's not emotionally attached to the outcome. He just loves the process. I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum, by the way. And that's why I find it incredibly boring. I need to be all in on something. At least that's what I am with Hampton. And it makes me happier. I want the legacy and I want the personal stake. It makes my ego feel good. The money alone doesn't move the needle for me. And you may feel the same way. But there's a lot of post-exit founders who fall into that post-exit trap of assuming that the next step is investing into startups and going wide and then realizing, like I did, by the way, almost all the mistakes I've talked about in this podcast I've made, but they realize that angel investing is pretty boring, but it's not for them. It's important to know yourself before making any major moves. In my opinion, by the way, after selling a company, is you should think long and hard about what you're going to do, because if you pick the right thing, it basically erases the chapter from your first exit, because this next thing is so big and so important, whether it's a huge company or it's important to you. And so I'm curious to the people listening, if you're watching on YouTube, let me know, are you a planner like me, or are you in it for the process like Auren? Either way, it doesn't matter. Let's get to Auren's advice. Do you have any advice to people who go through, like when someone's like, when one of your angel investments was like, hey, I have 100 grand in my bank account. Tomorrow I'm going to have tens of millions of dollars. Is there any bits of advice that you give to people on what mistakes to avoid?
I mean, I think there's just like tactical things, like don't quickly invest money.
How much time do you tell people to take?
I think you should just do it very gradually.
Like over a year?
Like, yeah, you shouldn't like all of a sudden, you shouldn't be writing like 250K checks for random things like right after. And like, and pretty much everyone has done that right after they made a whole bunch of money. But like, don't do that. I do think having a high amount in very safe things gives you a leeway to take more risks, and you'll probably be more likely, like even just putting a whole bunch of it in cash, even though that will be a subpar return, you may end up being much more successful.
I don't think
you don't have to like sell in the downturns, et cetera.
I agree and I disagree with you. I agree with you in that I think like anyone who's ever listened to at least one episode of this podcast, they know that I'm a big advocate of 80-20 index and bonds, like the simplest thing ever. And then I disagree with you because you said it's subpar. And like my expectation is that I'm going to make huge gains or huge losses on the privately held companies that I start and control.
Exactly. Yep.
And everything else, if I can earn the annual average over the last 100 years, I'm incredibly happy, which
Correct.
is roughly
I'm with you.
10% nominal, 7%.
I mean, even if I could
real.
earn, 5%, I probably wouldn't. That would be amazing.
Right. And so I think that one of the things I try to combat on this podcast is the idea of chasing huge returns that aren't like. If you are a professional, which I am, I start companies for a living, and anyone else can do that. You should, I think many people should or should try. But if you're not a professional investor, which I'm not, I don't think you should invest.
I agree with that. I think most people should never invest. Period.
Actively, like
even you shouldn't even think about it. I think if you have under $3 million of investable assets, you shouldn't even think about it.
And when you say you shouldn't think about it, what are you advocating for?
I would say your first thing you should think about is just like growing your revenues. So basically getting, instead of getting an 8% raise, get an 11% raise every year by just being better at work. And the second thing I would advocate for would be buying time so you can do that. So investing in yourself. And the third thing would be saving money because that's tax-free compounding. And then like what you do with if you have, again, like $600,000 in the bank, like what you do with that, like won't matter, honestly. Like just do whatever you want with it. Just whatever. If you want to put something in S&P 500, just don't even worry about it. Just like throw it in there and it doesn't matter. Just don't lose a lot of money and be fine. It's really about your savings and your until you hit a certain amount.
Do you have any money goals for the future? Like, are you hoping to become a billionaire by a certain age? Are you?
I mean, I think like a lot of people, I always would like more.
And why? Do you want more because you want to spend more, or do you want more because you want to prove to yourself that you can do it? Because you...
Yeah, probably the latter, but it's always unclear. It's always unclear. There's a scoreboard, and I'm competitive. And
you think that you're greater than some people who are ahead of you. I mean, this is how I feel. I'm just as good as this person and that person. I want to be able to It's just like,
I mean, I don't necessarily think about per se. I really enjoy watching other people be successful and stuff. I mean, especially people I like. I mean, if someone is a jerk, maybe, but I haven't met that many jerks, honestly, in my life. Like most people I've met and most people I've interacted with are like good people.
I have a feeling you have met them. You just are a very kind person.
No, I don't think I've met as many as you think, or maybe I've met them, but I don't think I've really spent a lot of time with them to realize someone's a big jerk.
I do think he's just a really happy guy, and that's probably because he's following his what not to do guide. If you want a what to do guide, Steve Houghton, who we had on this podcast, has a great list. He's a guy who's worth at least $1 billion, and he says that money is one of only 5 pillars to happiness. Click here if you want to see the other 4 pillars of happiness, according to Steve, according to this billionaire.